everyone, welcome to my channel. It's Maria. Today we are doing part 2 of the spring wreaths. This is a wood bead wreath, and this one is with these beads that I picked up at the dollar store and the gold rings that the wreath, the 3-pack of the wreaths that they have. Um, so I wasn't sure if I was going to use the medium sized one or the large one. And I decided to go with the large because I did have extras of these square beads because this is like a hanging thing that they have at the dollar store, and I had bought 2 and I used some from the first one on the previous craft, so I figured let me just see if this works for this. So it did. So I took them off the string, and then for the big wreath I found where the opening was, like the connection of the rings, and I cut right on that spot. So what I did was I started to feed it onto the wire slowly, and I think I have a total of 53. Um, Once I was done putting them all in, I, put them across, and then I ended up grabbing the last one that's there, and I glued the piece in place, like both of them together, and then I added more glue and I put one in the middle just to hide the opening, but also hold it in place because I added more glue in between, and I added 2 at the end that held them in place as well. So what I did here was like I split it and make sure that there was 25 on each side, and then that way it could be even, and then I grabbed the last one and I put some hot glue at the end. That way it could stay in place and it wouldn't come down. So you don't have to glue all of them, just the ones at the end so it can hold it in place. And then I grabbed these, not sure what they're called, but I got them from the floral section at the dollar store. But they were pretty, and I said, this would probably work perfect for this. Bought them a few weeks ago, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it yet. But then I ended up doing this. I figured they would be great for this. So I cut the ends off because they were pretty long. And then I grabbed my zip ties and I held it in place. I put 4 zip ties in total, 2 right in the center to hold both ends together, and then 1 to hold the stem at the top where the beads start. That way you don't see where the beads end, and they will be covering like that part right there. So that's what I did with those, and then once I held them in place I cut the ends off, and then I used some burlap ribbon just to make a bow for the front. Now I counted 8 squares, that's 8 inches. That's how many inches I used to make my loops for the bows, and I believe I did 6 loops in total. There's 3 on each side, and then I believe I got a zip tie in the middle, and then I tied that in place, and then I grabbed the middle part, and then I put I made like a tube, you can say, and then I put that over with a zip tie. But when I did that, I ended up tying it over the the loop of the ring. That way it can hold the bow in place, and then also that one piece. So this is like the red zip tie that's pretty long. So once I did that part, I just tied it in place, fixed the bow up, and then I pulled that, make sure it was tight enough, and then that would complete this one. Like I said, I did 3 loops on each side, and then I did that little tube in the middle, and then I fed the zip tie through the middle of that. And then I cut the ends of the bows. That way it can look really pretty at the end. But that won't complete this one. On to the next one. Okay, so our second wreath is a personalized wreath. I got this R from Walmart, and I believe it is 8 inches in height. Yes. So I grabbed this and I also grabbed the wreath that I'm going to use for this. So first I took off the tag on the back. I didn't have to, but I don't like keeping the tags on certain things. So I pulled the tag off of it and then I started to paint this in red. Now I started with the inner part of the letter because I feel like sometimes when I paint letters, I do the inner part and the outside last, and then I have a hard time because the front is already painted. So I just did the inner part and the outer around the letter, and then I did the inside, like the top of it. So just to fill it in. But I use DIY paints, Marquee by DIY paints, and that's a really pretty red color. So I use that for that letter. So this is the other wreath that I picked up. I think this one's about 12 inches, if I'm not mistaken. I think this was, yeah, I think it's a 12-inch one. But I was trying to figure out how I was going to put the letter on here because I wasn't sure if I wanted to use a zip tie or if I wanted to use some twine. So I ended up going with the twine. I got a really long string. I just eyed the measurement of it. I can't tell you the measurement that I used, but it was long enough to go around the wreath twice. So I put some hot glue, then I used a little bit of burlap that I had left over that I had cut before, and I used that to hold the twine in place. And then I checked it just to see if I put it in the right spot, and I did. So I put it to the side for now, and then I grab all my florals and my greenery. This is from the dollar store, the flowers, and I grabbed like the eucalyptus that I had, and then I had got these leaves as well, but I wanted to put this in the background. I had put the eucalyptus first, but I didn't really like how I put these leaves in the front. It just didn't look right, so I had to go back and put these on the back, and then put the eucalyptus on top, and then put the florals, like the flower. But these are not like the big flowers. These are like the really small ones, so it's like baby's breaths, kind of, but not quite. They're a little bit bigger. But anyway, I used some zip ties to hold these in place, and then I did the same thing with the flowers. I cut the stems as short as I could, and then I fed them through the pieces of the wreath, and then whatever was left over from the stem, I do end up using my tool to cut it, the wire cutter, to cut that at the end, because some of it was hanging out and I didn't want that to hang out, so I just cut that in place, like cut the piece that I needed. And then after I zip tie everything in place, I went and got this. It's like a white burlap, and this is a 6-inch one. So I grabbed a big enough piece to make a bow, and I didn't want to leave it white, so I ended up using my red ribbon to go in the middle of this bow because I did want to add some red onto it, like onto the wreath. And when I tried to make it with just the red bow, it just wasn't looking right. So I just grabbed the burlap that I had, and then I just wrapped the red ribbon around it just so it can have some color. And then I just fold it in place. And I do the same thing with the middle part. I get like I make like a little tube, and then I feed the zip tie through it, and then I put that onto here. So before I did that, of course, I needed to hold this in place, so I used some zip tie instead of using the hot glue like I used to, and I put that aside because it'll hold it in place. But with the tube that I made, I did the same thing that I did with the bow. I cut the piece of white burlap, I rolled it up, I glued it in place, and then I grabbed some red ribbon, and then I wrapped that around just to give it the same red line that I did on the bow, because I didn't want it to be just white. So I did use the red to keep it in place. I mean, to match it just like the bow. That way it can kind of align together, if that makes sense. So it kind of does. Once you see me put it on there, it kind of lines up correctly. So like I said, I did the same thing with this one. I use my zip tie and I put it in the middle, and then I tie it in place. Now the only thing that I did different with this was that I didn't have like the tail of it. So I grabbed some red ribbon and I added that to the bottom just to have some ribbon coming down. And then I cut the ends of that just to give it like that pretty touch on the bow. Now once I'm done cutting the ends of the ribbon, of all of the tail of the ribbons, I put a zip tie like in between. That way I can have it be able to like wrap around the bow, because I didn't use a string for this one. I used a zip tie. So I'm able to use a zip tie to tie it in place. Once I put the bow in place, I then grab my letter and I tie it around the back, and I use some hot glue to hold that in place, and then I don't cut the ends yet. I wrap it around a second time. So I have to go, like I go around the reef a second time, but I have to go through the letter in order to do it. But I then pull it in place just so you don't see the twine behind it. And then once I tie that at the end for the second time, I'd also add some hot glue to that as well. And then I adjust the letter because I think I put it a little bit too tight and the letter kind of like moved to the side a little bit. But I use my hot glue gun just to hold it in place just a little bit more. And this is how it turned out. I think it turned out really, really cute. This was a little challenging, I'm not gonna lie, to do, but I think at the end it turned out really nice. But if you stay to the end of this video, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more videos. To the next one. Bye!